Good day, class. Hope everybody doing well. All right, we're in week 4, um, and halfway through. At least it will be at the end of the week. Okay, so hopefully you've gotten all your work in. No one seems to be having any problems. So let's keep it up till till the end. All right. This week we are going to be discussing different levels of sports as far as it relates to interscholastic, college, and then professional sports. Just looking more at the organizational structure and some of the tenets and characteristics of each level, and some of the issues that exist in each area. Okay. As a reminder, don't forget it's midterms this week, so make sure that you get someone to proctor that exam for you, since it's an online class. We will not be taking that in person, not with me anyway. So make sure you get your stuff proctored, okay? In addition, I've not seen any groups for the case study, so I'm gonna go ahead and put the groups together today sometime, and maybe available tomorrow morning, that we can get kind of started on talking to your group members. All right, so make sure to check the groups so you know who to talk to, who to reach out to. Okay, and the selections are random since you guys didn't want to create your own groups. So wherever you end up with is who you end up with. Okay. All right. So let's talk some interscholastic athletics, right? So really, interscholastic athletics, we're just talking about, the area where, the youth and kind of the teens, the adolescents kind of exist, right? And how sports and athletics are intertwined, okay? So, as time has gone on, is interscholastic athletics has gotten bigger and bigger, and now it's become more of a, feeder program, or just more advanced in the way that they kind of grow athletes, and kind of the way they nurture athletes, the way they kind of groom athletes to be ready for the next level. Okay. So this interscholastic athletics, because they're for the most part sponsored by, either the city or the state, or, maybe they're at a private school, and it's private funding, but nonetheless, they all have an economic impact on society as a whole, right? Either they are expensive, all right, to maintain, because all the funding for uniforms, equipment, travel, all those things are coming from the city or from the state administrator. Okay. Also have an impact in a positive way, in the sense that they bring people to the gyms to watch, their kids or families or friends. And within that, it's like going to another, like a regular venue where there's food and drink. There's time that's associated with that, right? But there's a bigger buzz nowadays in the interscholastic athletics, just because athletes now are just bigger, faster, and are more ready than they were before, in the past 10, 15, 20 years, than they were before, to get into like more the next level, to the advanced level, right? Either be collegiate or professional, right? And we have students leaving straight from high school, going straight into the professional ranks, right? Baseball is like that. You can do that, NBA is like that. You have to do 1 year at least, and then you can leave. Um, but there's no any other sport that you can really do that. Tennis, of course, golf. You can do that in those sports, right? But again, there's a lot of attention that's brought upon the interscholastic athletics, just because it's not just kind of the breeding ground to figure out who the next superstar is. Okay, and so it's an important factor, or sector, I should say, in our athletics. All right, the first interscholastic athletic competition was a football game. Okay, or actually Um, it was a football game, but the Interscholastic Football Association was the first association to put on a football game that was done by interscholastic entity. Okay. Mm. So really, as I said before, um, a lot of cities and states have put a lot of money into the development and growth of their state associations because some states are known for certain sports. Um, for football, Texas, Florida are kind of where you'll get your kind of some of your top-notch athletes. You'll get them everywhere, California, but the states have put a lot of money into growing the sports programs because they realize that it's an avenue where a lot of kids participate in. One, two, it helps to keep the kids occupied and gives them some sort of motivation in conjunction with doing well in school. So you link the two together, and so you have kind of a motivator. If you really want to play sports, you also have to keep your grades up, right? Because you need to get to the next level. And so, those two things are put together. But, governments have, really put a lot of emphasis on making sure that they have good state programs that allow students to not only flourish, on, the city, county, state level, but to be able to go on and compete nationally and then, be ranked amongst the best. Okay. So the Midwest Federation of State High School Athletic Association, right, created in 1921. All right. So you have all the Midwest states in there for the most part, right? And they changed their name to National Federation of State High School Associations in 1923. Okay. So you have Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, and Wisconsin, right? Those states pretty much make up the majority of the Midwest, but there's still a few more states in there that aren't necessarily part of it. But again, with the way that they build these federations or these athletic associations, excuse me, every year or so they relook at it and try to figure out, okay, how can we grow it? Do we need to include other states nearby into this athletic association? What should we emphasize on as far as sports, right? Should we emphasize more on football and basketball and baseball and or lacrosse or some other sports that are maybe popular uh, due to the region, right? So when you talk about Midwest, you're probably talking, a lot of winter activities, football for sure, but indoor sports as well because of the weather. But you still have a lot of people that participate in winter sports, all right, because of the weather, because of terrain. Also, the Midwest tends to be pretty flat, so that can also lead to different, emphasis in different programs. Okay. All right. So you have the National Federation of State High School Associations. Okay. You have the Florida High School Athletic Association, University and Elastic League. Every state has a, athletic association. So they're all named differently. Usually it's, the state and then the athletic association. So it's Florida High School, or New York High School, or City, New York, or that kind of thing, right? Will designate, the association, okay? And that's really how things get managed, okay? Things as far as making sure that school is really at the core of of what we're trying to do, okay? And we try to support the academic mission of schools, all right? Because at the end of the day, the sports is there, but the focus of the school is to educate. All right. It's all about education because you're trying to build a person, a good citizen for the future, because we all know a very small population of people go on to professional sports and can actually make a living playing professionally. Okay. It's not, there's something that happens all the time. You may know a few people here and there that play professionally. I know a couple of people that in the NBA and coaches and players. But that I can count them on my hand, right? How many people actually make it to that high, professional level, right? I have other friends that are playing professional, but they're playing overseas or they're playing in other, you know, lower tiered uh, sports, right? But it all starts from the interscholastic, programs, right? So, as we talked about before, the United States, along with a few other countries, but not many, are one of the few that combine school and sports. And some countries see that as not being a good mix, right? Some countries see it as, hey, we need to separate education and sports. The two don't really have anything to do with each other. Because if someone excels at a sport, doesn't necessarily mean that they should have the added pressure of also excelling at school, right? Because regardless if they play a sport or not, they may not be good at school. Okay. But the key here is really about teaching life lessons. And so people get life lessons from school. And so knowing and understanding some common basic things is necessary for you to move on to the next level. And so we have this kind of, this relationship here in the United States between, the school and athletics, and basically interscholastic, right? Is where we really kind of get that term. Okay. All right. So we have impact of Title IX, which is, of course, the legislation that allowed women to participate in organized sports at the collegiate level and beyond. Okay, and also just in general, right, gave women the opportunity for a fair shake at participating in sports. Okay, and you can see it all over the place, right? We have pretty robust high school, college and professional teams for women, and even down to the elementary and middle school level. Pretty good programs, for girls. Typically not in school, but either club ball or things like that. You'll see that there's a um, pretty big group of women out there participating in sports. Right. We try to see, which state has the most participants in sports, and then what's the most popular sports for girls and boys. Okay, for the most part, globally, soccer or football is the most popular sport. All right, but then if we break it down regionally, um, or break it down by country, United States, of course, football is the top dog, followed by basketball, and then you have baseball slash softball in many instances. Then you have trickling into tennis and track and field and those kind of things, right? But in general, the majority of the folks that are involved in athletics at a younger age are typically, either playing football or playing basketball, basketball, or soccer. Okay, some baseball for sure. It's just that baseball takes you know, a bit more as far as getting folks out there. And there's softball out there for women, but you can see the impact of Title IX, from the women's national team, who are really the women's soccer national team, excuse me, who are really, really good, okay, and really are the, kind of the pride and joy of the United States when it comes to soccer, because the men's team is not that great. They are now just coming kind of into their own, but the men's team is pretty good. But the women's team is excellent and have gone on to achieve great success on the global level. Okay. And so, you see Title IX and what it's doing and allowing, young ladies to be out there. You got your Coco Gauffs, you got your Naomi Osaka's, you got, all these young phenoms in golf and in basketball who are women who are great, who are excellent at the sports and deserve a chance to, be models, right, for other little girls who also aspire to be great at a particular sport. Okay. All right. So when we look at operating models, all right, we uh we look at some considerations for structuring athletic departments. Okay. So of course the size of the school district always matters, right? How many schools you have in a district and how many people does that really equate to? Okay. Centralized versus decentralized organizational structure. So basically we're looking at more red tape, vice less red tape, or looking at, sort of having a central hub, a main center that everything goes to, vice having kind of a decentralized, many different leaders making their own decisions without having to really uh, go up for any decision making things. Okay. You also have your public versus private schools, right? So public, of course, the majority of where people go. Private schools cost a little bit more, but you'll get very high quality education in conjunction with some very um, good talent. Because if someone's going to private school strictly because they can play, they get a scholarship to football, basketball, whatever the case may be. Um, Usually is the cream of the crop that go to these private schools they can afford, or they get scholarships, whatever the case may be, right? We have IMG Academy, which is a great example of a school. It's a sports focused school first, but education is right there with it, and the way they balance it all out is very interesting, and they do it really well. And a lot of great athletes have come out of IMG, um, and so it can work, right, with these private institutions. But for the most part, most people are public schools, using public funding in order to run their teams. And so if you at public school, the good thing is that you have access as a coach, staff, you have access to a bigger population of folks, right? And so the bigger your school district, the more opportunity you have to have some talented people within your district, right? And so it's all about identifying those particular athletes within those districts early on, so that you can figure out what high school they're going to go to and how they're doing, and kind of track them. And then also putting them into, club ball or travel ball, right? When it's not school, when school's not in, what are they doing, right? How are they keeping their skills sharp, right? Well, we have them, in different summer leagues, right? We have a summer league in LA. We got one, New York. We got one in Chicago. I mean, there's a lot of different summer leagues that go on, um, throughout the summertime. Got the Drew League, so there's places, and there's other leagues and teams going uh, all the time for the kids. All right. So just a quick look at the organizational structure of a school district. Okay. So you have the superintendent who is on charge of all the schools within that particular county for the most part. Normally, the superintendent is a county superintendent, so all the schools within a certain county fall under his or her purview. The staff admin, high school principals, and then junior high school principals, ADs, and then you have your campus athletic coordinators, right? On a centralized, decentralized structure, you have your superintendent, you have assistant superintendent, high school principal, junior high school, district athletic, there are the ADs, and then Catholic campus athletic coordinator. All right. So you can see decentralized has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one extra, wicket, but it's just the way it's set up, in which, there's an assistant superintendent who kind of deals with all these other, folks, who deals with the district athletic directors. Okay. And the high school principals kind of manage the athletic directors, and the junior high school principals manage the campus athletic coordinator. So they don't necessarily have to go up to anyone to get permission per se. Okay, so the high school principal, the athletic directors, the district athletic directors, they all kind of report to that person and make decisions, based on what they think is correct. And again, look at the titles: district athletic directors and assistant superintendent. Those are pretty high level folks. Okay, and so as you start to look at it, centralized structure, you know, it offers a bit more, oversight. Okay, just because you kind of know everything's going on. The decentralized offers a little less oversight, a little more flexibility and freedom for the separate entities to kind of do what they need to do. Okay, some careers, if you're thinking about getting into intergalactic athletics, all right, executive director, CFO, director media relations and marketing, director membership services. Okay, so I would say these particular positions are at bigger, you know, more well-funded institutions and not just at your regular high school, middle school. Okay, you may have an executive director, but as far as a CFO, who's specifically, in a school district, and their main job is just to handle money for, you know, um, as far as sports money for, the district or for the county, that more than likely that particular person who does that falls under the CFO. Okay, it's not the CFO themselves. Okay, um, and so there's some other aspects, right? The marketing and really just managing those folks, right? Position at the local school level, right? You got your AD, your assistant AD, your business manager, coach, athletic trainer, and officials. And this is more reminiscent of your high school, elementary school, middle school type stuff, right? Where you have these particular positions available and open, and it's usually, the coach usually doubles as as a physical fitness instructor or physical fitness teacher, and you have your athletic trainers depending on how much money you have, and maybe find some volunteers, some people that want to try to to help the team out. There's the team manager who takes care of all the you know kind of the equipment needs and just the needs of the team, right? Cleaning the jerseys, making sure there's balls and all the equipment out ready to go, making sure, the facilities are good to go, right? So there's different positions that are available. And typically you want to start, depending, of course, what level you played at, you may have access to, other positions at a high level. But normally, people that want to start coaching or being involved in in sports in general, they normally start at the interscholastic level, right? They normally start at the high schools, elementary schools, middle schools, and kind of work their way up from there, based on their success and what it is they want to do. So some issues, of course, facing youth and adolescent sports. Okay, the concussion incidents in high school sports, of course, is a big deal, as it is in the professional ranks. Okay, so we want to make sure that we understand what concussions are, how they affect people, the concussion protocols, and just be ready for those things that are inherent of the sport. Right, those physical things that are inherent to the sport. We want experienced and certified athletic administrators, people that actually, understand funding for sports, understand how to set up, sporting activities, know how to manage sporting entities and programs, and know how to build these things up, right? Know how to build a lacrosse program and get a good coach and staff, right? And give people everything they need. So you need people that are, that know what they're doing. Okay. Of course, budgetary constraints, because again, unless you go in a private institution, the money that is used for interscholastic athletics, is public money, right? It's our tax dollars going to schools, and the schools use it to fund athletic programs. So it makes sense, right? Coach turnover and exiting, right? Coaches come and go. Sometimes it's not a good fit. In other instances, the coaches do well and they get to move on to, greener pastures. So they may jump from the high school level to a very, mid-major or a Division III or JUCO coaching opportunity, and they keep working their way up till wherever they want to get into. But that's kind of how it kind of goes. Okay. And then you got recruitment and retention of officials, right? Which a lot of people that play sports and don't maybe make it to where they wanted to go to, but they still want to stay involved in the sport or just want to stay involved in the sport in general. They become officials, right? They become referees. And so with a referee, you can still stay accessible to the sport, you stay involved, you stay current, you stay in shape, and you just kind of see the growth and the matriculation of the youth through that lens as a referee. And referees and officials themselves can move up just like anybody else, right? They start at the middle school, high school level, they go to the college ranks, and then if they want, try to get into professional ranks, right? So it's all just a matter of experience and being good at your job, and opportunities will at some point open up for you and give you a chance to, to do what you like, okay? So some issues facing interscholastic athletics, participation, of course, is one thing, okay? So it's it's really up to the parents and up to the athletes themselves to figure out whether or not they want to participate. Sometimes you have an athlete who doesn't necessarily want to play the game, but kind of being pushed into it by their parents or something like that. Sometimes you have issues with grades and they cannot participate. So that's always kind of a problem, right? Fair play, when we talk about fair play, we're really talking about how teams are composed and how coaches get their players, right? And for them not to go poaching in other districts or other, states even, to get, the players, top-notch players that they've seen or heard about or whatever the case may be, right? And so we want to, kind of stay in your own lane, right? Stay in your pool, okay, and get those people that are resident in your area and kind of grow that talent. All right, you got transfers, which kind of happen at the the high school level, but you got to be really really elite and dedicated to kind of go from one high school to the next. But people do it all the time. Okay, they go from one high school to another high school, some in different states. Sometimes they live you know, um, with foster parents or people, foster family, I should say. And so those people are there to help them. But all in all, at the end of the day, they are kind of hitting a certain milestone by going to a private school, going to a certain school because the talent is better, the opportunities are better, more exposure, more playing time, those kind of things, right? And you have your parents, of course, who are always going to be maybe one of your biggest challenges. It depends if they're too involved or they're not involved at all. Okay, sometimes you get lucky, you get that parent right in the middle, and most parents are pretty good about trying to not be too pushy. But as a parent, you're gonna push for the best for your kids, and if you see that your kid is not getting the same opportunities or same playing time or whatever the case may be as other athletes, and you feel that they're just as good as better, then that's something that you're going to take up with the coach or just have to let play out because again, you're not the coach as a parent, you're just there to support your athlete. But I understand that if your athlete isn't playing, then it makes sense. Okay, then you have your media aspect, of course. Okay. Okay, so now let's jump into intercollegiate athletics. All right, so when we talk about intercollegiate athletics, we're really just talking about, college sports and school. Okay. How do we, transition from high school into college but still having education at our core. Okay. And so, you'll see that the college sports industry has definitely grown. Um, Globally, all the college sports that we play in the States, you know, um, have definitely gotten a lot of attention and a lot of, betting and gambling propositions, when it comes to, the sports, collegiate sports. Okay. It's a big, big market. There have been many, many scandals and many, you know, dramatic situations in which people have been caught cheating, and or forced to, or coerced, or been put under duress to do certain things so that people who have bet on the games make a lot of money, and that kind of thing, right? Got spread and over under, and we got a whole lot of stuff that goes with gambling, right? But is very much, part of the collegiate sports world. All right. In that also, when it comes down to, college sports, there's all the, media rights, there's the deals, right? There's ticket sales, there's the, the monies that come from sport, which support the school, right? Which go into the school's coffers and support the maintenance of the operation of the school, right? And so for us in the United States, football, basketball, and baseball, I think, generate the most money for the school, specifically football, followed by basketball. Okay. Those two sports generate enough money to support all the other sports programs in a school. Okay. And so it's extremely important that you have a good football program, a good basketball program, right? So that you can have other sports that don't attract as much attention and don't bring as much revenue in, right? The bowling teams, the chess teams, even the lacrosse teams, even the soccer teams, right? There's not a lot of money that's generated through all those particular those teams. So when you see the students, the college athletes playing these sports, a number of them are on scholarship, right? All of them on scholarship, well, not all of them, a lot of them on scholarship. But when you talk about soccer, tennis, golf, those sports that don't bring in a lot of money, right? But all those students are definitely contributing to the school's success, but they're being supported by the football and basketball programs in the school for the most part. Okay. All right. All right. So the NCAA is the largest and most influential sports governing body in the United States. Okay. So the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, is the governing body for all collegiate athletics, and doesn't matter if it's Division 1, 2, or 3. Okay, you're part of the NCAA for the most part. Okay, and within that, right, you have your football subdivisions, and then you have your kind of your power conferences, right, like the Big Ten, ACC, the SEC, Pac-12. These are all Power Five conferences, that exist within the NCAA, which have the preponderance of the really great teams and great athletes, and for the most part, those are the guys that are trying, guys and girls that are trying to get into the professional ranks, right? And so the best approach is to really, try to get to a Division 1 school, and excel there, right? The best athletes usually are recruited by the top tier schools, your Kansases, your Dukes, your Alabamas, your, what other schools are out there that are great? Ohio State, depending on the sport, each school has its own kind of claim to fame uh, to that. So you will, kind of get athletes based on that. But every school's try Kentucky, Kansas, all these schools are all blue chip, and within Power Five conferences, and they're all trying to get the best athletes they can for as long as they can get them. right? Other governing bodies equal the NAIA, the NCCAA, and the AIHEC. Okay, you got the Junior College Association, the California Community College Association, and the Northwest Athletic Conference, right? You also have the MEAC, which is the Mid Eastern Athletic Conference, which a lot of there's a couple of HBCUs, historically black college universities in there. There's the SWAC, there's the WAC, which kind of encompasses Hawaii and Alaska and those states over there. Okay. All right. The basic function is to establish rules and regulations that support and sustain a level playing field, right? The conferences are there to make sure that sporting programs are run appropriately, ethically, sound judgment, right? And there's no mix up of, an amateur collegiate athlete and professional athlete, right? Once if you're in college, you can you'll play in the amateur ranks, all right? You're not going to play in any professional level because you don't have that designation as of yet. You're still an amateur athlete when you're in college, right? You're not getting, you're not doing this for profession as of yet, right? And so really, we're just trying to make sure that, everything is done above board, from the recruiting to making sure the students are, taking care of the academics, to their living and housing situation, having some parity across the board from big schools as compared to small schools, right? It's all about the money. So if you're in a school with a big program, right, you're going to have more resources, more access to things. In a school with a smaller program, less stuff, but you still, get money to do things, right? Still get money to travel and all that stuff. Okay. All right. So talking about college sport finance, like I just said before, right? Generating revenue versus turning a profit, right? They're just trying to make money. They're not necessarily trying to, there's no bottom line per se. Okay. Right. When we're talking about professional sports, we're trying to turn a profit. Okay. Schools are not for profit. Okay. Schools are here as academic learning institutions, and the money that's generated goes to help support other things within the school and not necessarily going into, people's pockets per se, right? In theory. Okay. So, some of the things that, can be affected by the, sports finance is just, declines in people going to games because we don't have money for a better stadium. We don't have money for a better parking lot. We don't have the newest kind of technology that facilitates, the selling of the tickets and the scanning of the tickets. We don't have, enough money for good equipment, and we don't have really the exposure or the status that we need to attract some of more of the top tier athletes to come to our school. And so as those things start to kind of compile and come together, people are less and less interested in coming to certain activities, right? So watching the games, right? They just don't want to, right? And all that leads into is, if the football team, the basketball teams are doing poorly, then all the other teams are doing even worse, right? And to the point where they may even get rid of some programs, right? That not every school has a football team. Not every school has a basketball team. Not every school has a golf team or a baseball team, right? For the most part, they'll have football and basketball, but sometimes they don't have anything else, right? They may have one other sport, tennis maybe, right? Or golf, right? Depending on what they can afford. But in many instances, if football and basketball aren't generating any revenue, more likely there's a very limited amount of teams or activity or sports that can really be kind of supported at the school. Okay. Then we have gender equity, right? Just making sure that the female athletes get the same resources as the male athletes, and a lot of times it boils down to money, and the female teams not getting as much money as the male teams for whatever reason. Some athletic administrators when it comes to intercollegiate sports, right? You have your athletic director, okay, your AD, you have your associate AD, you got your managers and the administrators and governing body, right? And so basically you have your team, you have the team staff, the managers, then you have the athletic director who manages all the programs. And then the AD, assistant AD, associate AD really just makes sure that, hey, all the staff members have what they need and are operating the right way, and just make sure operations is good. Okay. When it comes down to first line managers, athletic departments, we have an academic coordinator, business finance manager, compliance officer, development, public relations director, event and facility manager, right? So these guys are a little bit more involved at the college level. Okay. Academic coordinator for sure is kind of one of the more important people on the collegiate level, because they have to make sure that the students schedule lines up with the sporting schedule and their majors, and make sure that they keep up with their work. So there's a lot that goes into being an academic coordinator, right? You have to make sure that everybody stays eligible to play, right? Maintain that 2.0, right? That's the name of the game, 2.0 to play. Okay, so they have a big job, right? The business finance managers also have a big job in making sure there's enough money and going out there to fight for resources for the teams, and making sure they get a fair share of the pot, and that it doesn't get allocated all to one particular sport or one particular department. Okay. Some more first line managers. Okay. You got your ticket manager, your equipment manager is another important one that always gets overlooked, but very essential, making sure that everything's ready, good to go. Especially at the collegiate level, you have maybe a football team of 50, 60 people, basketball team, 15 people are traveling. They also have to travel. There's a whole lot of things that go with that. So, you can definitely pull out a lot of opportunities on the collegiate level if you're willing to work hard, maybe even volunteer at the beginning, just to get your foot in the door. You say, hey coach, I just want to help the team out. I work pro bono, I do for free for whatever. While you're in school, even you can do that if you're interested in uh, coming up the ranks in a athletic organization. All right, there's stuff out there. Okay. All right. So as administrator, your job really is to, kind of arbitration, mediation, peacemaker to negotiate, right? You're out there brokering deals. You're out there trying to get money for the programs. You're out there setting up different, you know, events, right? You're out there talking to other schools and other teams and trying to set up your schedule and seeing what is the best thing for your team in order to advance your profile. Okay. All right. It's just a side note, Kevin Warren, uh, first African American Service Commissioner of the Power Five Conference. And so you start seeing the kind of the initiative to diversify within the collegiate ranks, right? Because for the most part, most of the administrators and those folks are typically white or Caucasian males, very few women, and very few minorities in general. So there is definitely a push to have more minority involvement in sports, not only at the collegiate level, but the professional level. Certain sports have a good representation. Others still need to work on that stuff, but a lot of it is really due to the demographic of the people that play the sport. In some instances, others is just the way sports goes on the professional level. On the collegiate level, it's definitely easier to change. It's just that people within the institution, within the system itself, are not necessarily, are just kind of now embracing diversity and trying to get people of different backgrounds into, the college ranks. All right. So when we look at sports and, social media, right? Social media across the board has helped many companies just with marketing, advertising, and just put a bigger, spotlight on them. Okay. And so when you have social media and you use it for your college, sports, it really helps to generate revenue, right? You can deliver information and it helps to, that the fans stay connected to the team, right? And that's across the board. Social media is there for any organization, but specifically for college, where there's always a battle for money. There's always you know a fight for resources, right? Why not leverage social media? One, it's free. You really just need somebody to manage it for you, and they can, relatively easily, once they get it set up, can manage. One person or two people can manage it for the most part, right? But it has huge returns for a very minimal investment. Okay. All right. Sorry. All right. Now we're gonna jump into some professional sports, right? Stuff that we tend to see and more involved in as we get older and kind of move away from college, and people that make it into the professional ranks. All right. Those are the cream of the crop, the elites of the elite. Even though even the worst guy on the bench who never plays, who's a professional, is probably better than 99% of people that are really good, but not a pro. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. Okay, they're professional for a reason. They can play, even though maybe when they get professional ranks, they're subpar, they're just average professional, but they got there because they're elite in general. Okay. Okay. So professional sports, of course, plays a huge role in our society. And we talked about this before. Okay. When we look at any sporting entity, we have to look at the labor, we have to look at the management, we have to look at the governance, right? The labor being the athletes themselves, the management being the, kind of the owner, right? The owner, or not, well, not the owner, but the coaches and those kind of things, right? And the governance being the owner and the board of trustees and those folks, right? And trying to figure out how are they running the company, right? What is their direction that they're trying to go into? How do they build value for the team? How do they recruit? How do they, draft, I should say, athletes? How far back do we need to, start monitoring certain athletes? How much do we pay, athletes for that time, right? Being a rookie all the way to, a vet, right? How do we manage that, right? How do we manage the payroll for our staff and our other folks that are doing non-athletic or non-sporting activities, right? They're all there to support the team, right? But an organization, but they may not have a direct impact on the sport that athletics themselves. Okay, but we have to keep all that in mind. All right, some history. All right, for professional sports. Right, the Greek Olympic Games was kind of the first big organized, sporting, activity. All right. I guess at that point it would be considered professional sports, and if they even really had that, I guess the only sport that had professionally was gladiator sports. But as a sporting event within that context, they had running, jumping, really track and field activities. And early on the Greek Olympic Games, right? They hadn't developed a lot of different games as of yet. So it was really about, track and field things for the most part. Okay. And then, having, sports segregated, right? We had the Negro League, and we had the MLB. We had kind of a integration of minorities, starting with Jackie Robinson being one of the first African Americans within the sport. of baseball, all right? Roberto Clemente, Hispanic or Latino within the sport, so all those folks, just, Bill Russell, and some of the things they had to deal with back in the 50s and 60s as we're trying to figure out you know, um, how do we meld these two entities together, right? And how do we eliminate race out of sports? Race should have no impact on sports. Okay. I know it does to a certain degree. If you look at certain sports, you know, uh, it may be maybe majority one demographic as compared to another. And a lot of times that has to do with socioeconomic issues, right? Socioeconomic things. And so it's not always about, just being black or white, Latino, or whatever the case may be. If you look at every sport across the world, or across the spectrum, right, we pretty much have someone from every race in the sport, right? So we've had great, you know, uh, great black hockey players, right? And hockey is predominantly a white sport. Well, I don't say predominantly, but there's a lot of majority of the players are white. Okay, but we have some black players in the professional hockey teams, right? Or very, very good, excellent players. Okay, football predominantly, minority or African American. Basketball is the same thing. But when I look at those sports, I really think of more socioeconomic access, because a number of those athletes, if they decide to do another sport, they probably would excel. But because golf might have been too expensive at the time, swimming was not accessible because we had, lack of resources as far as pools, and appropriate training and those kind of things, right? The school that they went to may not have a swimming program, fear of the water. Is other things that go that are attached to diversity and inclusion as it relates to sports. Okay, we also have to think about women in Title IX, right, and how that opened up the door for women to participate in sports on every level. Now we have great, professional women's leagues, but most importantly, we have women that are in the professional coaching ranks. Okay, women that are that coach on a football team, on an NFL team, or an NBA team, right? So we're moving forward, right? We're making progress, right? Maybe a little slow, but nonetheless, we're doing the best we can, but we're making progress. And so that's important because, again, we're trying to create diversity and inclusion. We want people to feel that they have a fair and level playing field. There's an opportunity for everyone. As long as you're talented, you have the drive and the passion, and that you have the knowledge and the acumen to do this. All right, and it's been proven time and time again that race has nothing to do with it. Neither does gender. Okay, so we have to kind of put those biases and perspectives and negative perceptions to the side and allow people to display their talent, and accept them for what they bring to the table and who they are, not their physical being, I should say. Okay. So some of the aspects of professional sports as compared to collegiate and interscholastic sports, right? Interdependence, right? The professional sports, really rely on each other as an organization, right? They really rely internally on a lot of things, and so everything's kind of connected when you talk about professional sports, right? And it drives so many different other industries within our society, right? And so there's a dependence on that also, on the sports, right? On retail, on merchandising, on even hospitality and just food and entertainment and that kind of thing, right? Structure and governance, right? It's a little different, All right, the structure many times and the governance is private into a certain degree. Okay, because now we have owners of teams, and these people are individual private citizens who just happen to own a team, who have the resources to do that, right? And so things are run a little different, but everything kind of is a little bit more centralized, whereas it's decentralized to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, the commissioner of each particular organization, manages the teams, right? But it's centralized in that way, where there's a center headquarters where all the administrative things get done, all the punitive and legal things get done. But on a day-to-day operations, type basis, the teams, have a lot of autonomy to do what they want individually. So this is where it's decentralized in nature, and they don't necessarily have to go up to the commissioner and ask the commissioner to do certain things, right? They can run the practice however they want. They can, have people on leave or however they want to run it is fine, as long as they keep the headquarters or the governing entity in keep them in the know, right? Keep them abreast of what's going on, right? Labor management relations totally different at the professional level, right? It's a business, okay? Let's not ever forget that. And so we're always in this constant battle about how much does the organization get based or compared to how much the athlete gets, right? How much the labor get, right? But if the labor is the one that's generating the revenue and people are coming to see the labor, right, then the labor should garner a fair share of the revenues and the profits, right? And so there's always this constant battle back and forth between the athletes and the management, the owners, right? As far as like who's going to stay, who's going to go, what kind of contract you deserve, how much money can we give you? Give you this much money is going to affect us in different ways, right? And how can we work through those particular issues to make sure we build the best team possible, but also retain, our superstar athletes, right? And those guys that are really high caliber in the stratosphere by themselves, and try to, add value to the team, but also, make a profit and have, liquid capital to make sure we can do the things we need to do. All right. And then, of course, the role of electronic and new media. All right. So social media, when it comes to professional sports, is a whole different ball game. You could do a whole class on it, tell you the truth, because there's a level of what's the word I'm looking for? You have to be careful if you're a professional athlete about the things that you put out there in social media. Okay. Now, social media is great for the company, great for the organization, I should say. You're getting advertising and exposure and all this other stuff, marketing stuff out there, just dissemination of information, just like across the board for everybody else. But now the other problem that, compounds the issue is that you have athletes now who also have their own opinion about things, who also just private citizens, and sometimes they want to voice something. And the minute they voice something, it automatically gets attached to the organization, right? And so just because an athlete or a person within the organization thinks a certain way, doesn't mean that that's what the organization stance is, right? And so there has to be a very clear delineation. There has to be a lot of policy and a lot of guidance in making sure that the athletes, the staff, everyone within the organization understands that you just can't go on social media and say what you want. You can't, rant and rave. You can't, everything in your private life is really subject to public scrutiny. And that is the price you pay, for being kind of a professional athlete, garnering, millions of dollars, because the public wants access to you. Okay. So social media, has kind of become a way in which athletes can advocate for the things that they're passionate about, but also, they can also get in trouble on it for saying the wrong things or, getting into public altercations, or getting into verbal shouting matches on social media. So we've seen that across the board where we've seen athletes, get into a little hot water because of some of the social media things that they posted. Okay. This is the example of the MLB organizational chart. Okay, as far as the conferences, all right, the division, all right, National League East, National League Central, and so forth and so on. Okay, so you have 3 National League divisions and 3 American divisions. They're all regional, right? National East, National Central, and then National West, and American East, American Central, American West. Okay, and so you kind of see where the teams break down and who plays where and what. Okay, some of these have changed, of course, right? You see, the Angels are in Anaheim. What else? Let me see if anything else substantial has changed here. I think that's it. Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, that's all. Okay. All right. So when we talk about interdependence, teams need to compete and cooperate simultaneously. Okay. League think, you can think of it as kind of like group think. Okay. We don't want to necessarily get wrapped up in whatever the league is doing, we're gonna do, sort of, right? Or we're afraid to tell the league no, that's not a good idea, right? Or we follow the league into a bad idea, right? That's really what league think or group think is, right? Where someone says something and because of the peer pressure of the group, or no one wants to be seen as the one that's going against the leader, even if it's a bad idea, we roll with it anyway, right? And so we want to kind of stay away from that if it's a bad decision, right? But for the most part, leagues, NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, those leagues have been pretty well, led, and so you want them to kind of have a little league think and be and conform sort of to some of the league mentality, right? The things, the thoughts, and the culture of the league, right? You want that to kind of disseminate into the teams, but again, the teams do compete against each other, but they also work together, right? Just, different teams share the same stadium, right? In the case of the Chargers and the Rams, they share, I think it is SoFi, if I'm not mistaken, SoFi Stadium, I think, in LA. For a while, the Clippers and I mean they still do. The Clippers and the Lakers share what used to be the Staples Center, now the Crypto.com stadium or arena, whatever you want to call it. Okay. There's also the revenue sharing, right? And so, revenue sharing, basically the money's coming from all the media deals, right? The deals with CBS, ABC, ESPN, all the deals with, Gatorade, all those kind of things, right? They all generate revenue that is split, not necessarily evenly by all the teams, but for the most part, as even as can be, depending on certain concessions. I'm sure there's other things behind the scenes that affect that, but for the most part, revenue sharing is something that all the leagues do with each team. Okay, you have your luxury tax, of course, and that is just basically a way to limit how teams build, how managers and leaders build their teams. All right, they like you can't be the Yankees of yesteryear, right? Where the Yankees historically would just go out and buy a whole team. Okay, they would go over the luxury tax because they didn't care, because they had quality athletes and they were winning, World Series and pennants and that kind of thing. So they weren't really worried about it, right? But not every team can do that, right? And so, once you get to a certain payroll, once you get past that, then the league says, hey, you know what? You're about to hit the luxury tax because you exceeded your allotted payroll. Okay. You can do it. You can go get another player. You can pay him more. But in order to be fair to all the other teams, this is the cap at which we will operate on as far as payroll. This is the amount of money you have to build your team, right? Everybody has the same amount of money to build their teams, right? Or the same limit, I should say, right? If you want to go over that limit, there's a tax associated with that, right? Some teams choose to go with the luxury tax, Golden State Warriors over the luxury tax, but they won, multiple championships, and they recoup their money back in the revenue that's garnered from, the sale of everything that goes with championships, okay? So the luxury tax is a big deal, and most teams hate it and try their best to stay under it. But sometimes, when you have a good team and you got to pay your players, and you want to keep certain players, you may have to go with the luxury tax a little bit. Okay. So structure and governance. All right, you got your league commissioners, I said before, your board of governors, and then your central administrative unit, right? So you have your commissioner. And then the commissioner is really there as the head to make sure that all the team owners who make up the board of governors, right, are, basically doing their thing, just kind of dole out, reward and punishment, right? That's really what the commissioner is there for. Now, the commissioner can't, again, go down and dictate how a team does what it does, right? As long as within the parameters or the rules of the organization of the league, right? They can't tell them what days to practice. They can't tell them, what uniforms to wear, when they want to wear, how they practice, where they, none of that, right? The only thing they can do is, kind of big administrative stuff. Hey, this is the salary cap. This is, we have to go to collective bargaining. We are passing out, doling out fines for, certain things during the game. If you, touch the referee, or you become physical with someone, maybe you'll the league will take a look at it and fine the team, which in turn will fine the player. But the league is really, and the administrative units and the board of governors really are about big ticket issues, right? Proper equipment, the long-term goals of the company, of the organization, those sort of things. All right, like I said already, some labor management relations, right? Collective bargaining, free agency, salary caps, player draft. The important thing is to keep in mind that all this is, it's a business, okay? It's all a business, okay? And the teams are trying to get the best players they can at the lowest cost. The players are also trying to get on the best teams they can, but keeping in mind that they also want to make the most money they possibly can, especially early on in their prime, because as they get older, they know their athletic prowess is going to decrease. And so it's kind of the way things go is you get on a rookie contract, and as your rookie contract starts to expire, they start to evaluate what is your value, right? What are you worth, as far as the market. And then from there, if they're going to retain your services, if you're going to stay within that particular league, then you'll find a landing place for yourself. The team that you're currently on may say, you know what, we're gonna, extend your contract and give you, another 2-year, $50 million deal, or they may whatever deal it is, right? But salary caps, collective bargaining, those two things kind of go hand in hand, because during collective bargaining is where they really talk about the salary caps, and where they talk about how much of their revenue the athletes get, right? How much of the profit sharing happens, right? 50, 50, 50, 60, 40, what's the split between owner and team, right? And team and athletes, or labor and management, okay? Then the player drafts, right? How does that go, and all that stuff. So each particular league has their own way of doing it, but for the most part, the teams that don't do well during the season are the ones that are given the opportunity to kind of be at the top of the draft board, so that they can kind of pick out the new, the best and greatest talents coming out. So to help build their programs up and build their teams up. Okay. Role of electronic and new media, again, same kind of thing, right? Television, and also the coverage of sports, via Sirius and, satellite television, and Amazon Prime, who's taken over the Thursday night NFL. All those things have helped the leagues generate more revenue, get more exposure, to the point now where the NFL and the NBA are doing games internationally, right? Trying to grow their international presence and be out there on a global level, right? The NBA has, always been, out there in the forefront when it came to a global perspective, but now it's growing even more due to the fact that we have a large number of international athletes, international basketball players that are in the NBA who have excelled and opened the door and, kind of shown the world that the best basketball players don't necessarily reside in the United States anymore. Okay. And we want that. We want it to be a global sport. We want it to be a global endeavor. That way we get the best of the best. All right. And, you get to go to different places and check out different countries. And that, as I said, sports really connects people in a way that other things cannot. And you can really mend a political situation through a sporting activity, right? Through, the sportsmanship and just kind of the camaraderie of being an athlete and competing against someone who is just as good as you, right? And seeing who the best is, and at the end of the day, leaving friends, right? Leaving, understanding each other a little bit more, having a better understanding of the context in which the person is grown in and their experiences and kind of where they came from, and understanding their celebrity or status in their country, right? And what their citizens and what their countrymen think of them. Okay. All right. So when we talk about revenue for sports, of course, the gate receipts, ticket sales is always number one at the top, right? Then we have licensing merchandising revenue, media contracts, which are huge, right? ABC, ESPN, CBS, kind of things I talked about, and sponsorships, all right? And so all those things kind of come together and provide the bulk of monies for the leagues. Okay. Here we have table 10.2, and it has attendance and gate receipt information for select U.S. professional sports leagues. All right. So let's see. NFL 2019, 16 million people attended, 66,500 per average attendance per game. Gate receipts, so $2.29 billion was generated in 2019 for an NFL. The highest team gate receipts, the New England Patriots. So the New England Patriots made the most money. NBA, okay, total attendance 21 million. You see more people are coming to NBA games. Probably a lot of it due to weather too, to tell you the truth. Golden State Warriors, of course, and 1.9 billion. It's not a bad gate. Not a bad gate. Okay. Let me see. That's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, because I think this is what total attendance per game, gate receipts. Yep. Let me see. NHL, Vegas Golden Knights, New York Yankees, as I mentioned before, right? 68.48 million in attendance for the MLB. And, what you call it, in 2019. WNBA, which is good to see. Gate receipts. Let me see. All right, so there's no gate receipts for MLS, which is the soccer league, and the WNBA. There's no gate receipts for there either. All right, but as you can see, very high attendance, right? In total, attendance per games, and then the gate receipts are astronomical, right? So there's lots of money to be made. Lots of money to be made, right? Some challenges down the road, okay? Really is about, keeping the athletes happy, but also making sure that the owners are also, investing and developing the organization and, just making sure that they get along, okay? We want to keep that relationship as happy and as, cordial as possible, okay? Because again, the athletes are always trying to maximize their money, just like the owners, right? But the owners want to pay out the least amount of money as they probably can, because again, there's no guarantee that you pay an athlete $40 million and that they're going to continue to produce at the same level. And you have the injuries to consider, right? And there's contracts that are guaranteed and you have to pay in regards to the point. And so there's a lot of things that you have to think about as a owner, as the management, when it comes to, maintaining a good working relationship with labor, right? New technology is really having a good, well, somewhat positive impact on sports, right? It's enabling for better officiating, different perspectives for the fans, and also different angles in which that um, trainers and coaches can use some of this technology to better their athletes by showing them, better breakdowns of how they're moving, what they're doing, that kind of thing. Right? It also, has some challenges with it in that sometimes the technology, in order to use it, it kind of slows down the pace of the game, right? We need a timeout because we have to do a review of a play, right? Just to make sure, or there's a challenge on the field by the coach, and coach says, "Hey, this was a touchdown," or the person stepped out of bounds, and you're disputing that. Okay, now we have to stop the game, go look at the camera, go look at the footage, rewind it, so the technology is great, but it also, at certain times can slow down the game. Okay. And then just dealing with globalization, which in my mind is a good thing. It's just going to, there's going to be maybe a need to establish a, um, a global sporting entity, right? Aside from the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. Aside from that body, we may need at some point a governing body that is, that deals strictly on the international level. Once we get to the point where, there's international competition in a more relevant and pervasive way, right? Where maybe the NBA, whoever wins the NBA championship, they go on and play in the global championships, right? Each country has their professional leagues, and whoever comes out of that professional league as the top dog, they play on the global level, and then whoever wins that is the global, is the world champ, the real world champ. Okay. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Some opportunities within, professional sports, it's like any other organization, COO, CFO, CMO, general counsel, general manager. But, those positions, of course, take time. A lot of them take money. All right. So you have to kind of build your way up to those things. The player personnel positions, a little more accessible and more likely to where, you would start if you want to be involved in professional sports in a non-athletic way. Okay. As far as when I say non-athletic, I mean about you actually playing or participating in the sport itself. Okay. Coaching staff really is where a lot of people go. Video support staff, which is a place where a lot of great coaches start. And then you learn a lot as you watch video, you break down video, you look at different player habits, and it gives you a better understanding of the game because you can see what everyone is doing. You have an opportunity to break it down, which helps you become a better coach because now you can start teaching some different things and working on some different things and fixing some deficiencies. Right. Business positions, right? You can be ticketing, sports data analyst, sports commentator, community media relations. There's a number of jobs that can be had in the professional sports world. Okay. So with that, this ends this particular lecture for this week. I hope everyone has a great week. Make sure to get your midterm scheduled and completed. And if you have any questions or comments, please make sure you reach out to me. As I said, I will have the groups for the case study hopefully posted by, if not today, tomorrow for sure. Okay, so pay attention and be sure to reach out to your group mates. Okay, all right, I will see you next week.